painted on the wall there. It said, "Be curious, not judgmental." And I like that. Because if they were curious, they would ask questions. You know? Questions like, have you played a lot of darts, Ted? What the happiest animal on earth is? It's a goldfish. You know why?
No.
It's got a 10-second memory. Be a goldfish. Jamie, I think that you might be so sure that you're one in a million that sometimes you forget that out there you're just one of 11. Well, when I was 3 years old, I got attacked by our neighbor's dog. I don't remember it happening, but my mother said it was pretty scary, you know. It's funny to think about the things in your life that can make you cry, just knowing that they existed can then become the same thing that make you cry knowing that they're now gone. Expectations for us are as low as a rattlesnake's belly button, and my hopes are as high as a giraffe's top hat. Well, I'm so dumb that the first time I heard y'all talking about Yorkshire pudding, I thought it was a fancy word y'all had for dog poop. I think that's what it's all about. Embracing change. Oh, hey, one last thing. And I want everyone's eyes on me when I say this. Look at me.
The book was better. Look, I enjoy being intellectual and pretentious as much as the next guy, but sometimes the movie is way better than the book. Cases in point. Number 1, Silence of the Lambs. The script is tight, the performance is transcendent, the book middling at best. Number 2, Stand By Me. Stephen King wrote a lot of his classics coked out of his mind, so it makes sense that they'd be hard to translate to the silver screen. But Rob Reiner and those kids nailed it. Number 3, Fight Club. I'm not going to get into specifics on this one because we're not supposed to talk about it. Suffice to say, you can skip the book. Number 4, The Godfather, the big one. Parts 1 and 2 are operatic masterpieces of modern cinema. The book is pulp trash. Finally, The Avengers. Well, really, all the Marvel movies. It is a shame that conspiracy theorists spend so much time digging around in rabbit holes, because reality is far stranger than anything the trolls on 4chan have ever come up with. For example, you can trace the voting patterns in present-day Alabama all the way back to the geographic quirks of the Earth 145 million years ago. During the Cretaceous period, part of what we now call Alabama was beneath a vast ocean. Millions of years of critters living and dying created fertile soil perfect for agriculture, which Americans eventually took advantage of by cultivating crops like cotton on huge plantations. Of course, huge plantations require large groups of workers, and, well, folks back then were looking to keep payroll small, so slavery. The descendants of those formerly enslaved people still live in that region of Alabama today, and they tend to vote Democratic. You ever wonder why people look so stern and serious in old-timey pictures? After all, it was the good old days. What were they so grumpy about? It turns out that a big part of it is that you had to sit really still to make a photograph back then. Holding a smile for 2 to 3 minutes was a challenge, so a neutral face was easier. Maybe that's why notorious joker, Honest Abe Lincoln, looked so stern in the 130 known photographs of him. That's right. There are only 130 photographs of Abraham Lincoln known to exist. There's even a Wikipedia page that describes the circumstances and origin of each of them. I myself had at least 130 pictures of me taken before the age of 6, and my own son doubled Abe's record in the first 2 hours of his life. I took at least 500 photos in the delivery room, along with a video of the birth that his mother made me delete. We live in a well-documented time. For years and years, every ninth grade biology class in the United States made kids do the tongue map lab. You and your lab partner would put little flavored strips all over each other's tongues and map out what each part of the tongue could detect. The tip could detect sweetness, the sides could taste sour, way in the back was bitterness, the middle could taste umami, which sounds like a made-up word, but heck, all words are made up. The tongue map lab was one of the most entertaining things you could do with your tongue in high school, second only to prom night, and it's all fake. Your tongue can taste all kinds of things all over. But generations of kids falsified their results because they knew what answers the teacher was looking for. So instead of getting kids to engage in the scientific process, it taught them to value dogma. And that's a bitter truth you can taste with any part of your tongue. Panda walks into a cafe. He orders a sandwich, eats it, then draws a gun and fires 2 shots in the air. "Why?" asks the confused waiter as the panda makes toward the exit. The panda produces a badly punctuated wildlife manual and tosses it over his shoulder. "I'm a panda," he says at the door. "Look it up." The waiter turns to the relevant entry in the manual and sure enough finds an explanation. Panda, large black and white bear-like mammal, native to China, eats, shoots, and leaves. We're talking about the Oxford comma here, friends. Now, I know that patience can be a subtle thief, but sometimes you really have to add that last comma and take a pause. Sons of Scotland, I see a whole army of my countrymen here in defiance of tyranny. You've come to fight as free men, and free men you are. What would you do without freedom? Will you fight? Fight, and you may die. Run, and you'll live, at least for a while. Dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom? Here's some 5th grade geography for you. How many oceans are there on this big blue marble we call Earth? 4, right? Wrong, at least according to my 10-year-old and his teacher. Growing up, there were 4 oceans: Atlantic, Pacific, Indian, and the other one, Arctic. Well, they apparently found another one since I was in grammar school, the Southern Ocean. It surrounds Antarctica. Apparently, it's distinct enough to count as its own thing. And that's not all. How many continents are there? 7, right? Well, apparently that's up for debate now too. Turns out that the definition of continent is usually more cultural than geographic, and the difference between what was Africa, what was Asia, and what was Europe had a lot to do with the worldview of whoever was talking about it. So there's between 4 to 7 continents, depending on how you're defining the term. Trends come and go, but one thing seems certain. The Beatles are here to stay. Broke up 54 years ago. 2 are dead, and they still released a #1 song this year. I've purchased Revolver in 5 different formats in my life, but now I just stream it anyway. Their story inevitably leads to the vilification of Yoko Ono. Some still blame her for the breakup. Younger folks snicker at TikTok clips of her screeching over a Lennon-Chuck Berry jam. But I say to you that Yoko was a talent and a force in her own right. She came from a wealthy family and was famous in the art world long before she met John Lennon. She didn't need his money or his fame. She wasn't interested in old-time rock and roll, but she loved performance art. You can draw a direct line from her avant-garde screeching to punk rock in general. and the harmonized wailing of the B-52 specifically. Respect to the widow Ono. Let me ask you, what's the most dangerous dog breed in the world today? Most people might say the dreaded pit bull terrier. Temperamental, unpredictable, savage, and strong. If the neighbor's pit bull got loose in the neighborhood, it'd probably snap through your kid's femur just as easily as it would bite through a milk bone. But the pit bull is just the most recent in a long history of demonized dog breeds. In the late 1800s in New York City, they were terrified of a breed of the Spitz. Rabies was rampant, and those little guys ran loose and bit freely. The German Shepherd became the dog to fear in the early 1900s. In retrospect, people probably should have kept a closer eye on the Germans instead of their dogs. Next was the Rottweilers, and now the Pit Bull. But Pit Bulls have been around for as long as those other dogs. Petey, the dog from the Little Rascals, Pit Bull. The RCA Victor dog, Pit Bull. Fear is a liar. Don't listen to it. People will come, Ray. They'll come to Iowa for reasons they can't even fathom. They'll turn up your driveway, not knowing for sure why they're doing it. They'll arrive at your door as innocent as children, longing for the past. They'll pass over the money without even thinking about it, for it is money they have and peace they lack. And they'll walk out to the bleachers and sit in shirt sleeves on a perfect afternoon. They'll find they have reserved seats somewhere along one of the baselines where they sat when they were children and cheered their heroes. And they'll watch the game, and it'll be as if they dipped themselves in magic waters. The memories will be so thick, they'll have to brush them away from their faces. This field, this game, it's a part of our past, Ray. It reminds us of all that was once good and could be again. Oh, people will come, Ray. People will most definitely come. In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world, and you will be launching the largest aerial battle in the history of mankind. Mankind. That word should have new meaning for all of us today. We can't be consumed by our petty differences anymore. We have to be united in our common interest. Perhaps it's fate that today is the 4th of July, and that you will once again be fighting for our freedom, not from tyranny or oppression or persecution, but from annihilation. We're fighting for our right to live, to exist. And should we win the day, the 4th of July will no longer be known as an American holiday, but as the day when the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day. We're in hell right now, gentlemen. Believe me. And we can stay here, or we can climb out 1 inch at a time. I can't do it for you. I'm too old. I made every wrong choice a man can make. I pissed away all my money. I chased off anyone who's ever loved me. And lately, I can't even stand the face I see in the mirror. When you get old, you find out life's a game of inches. So is football. On this team, we fight for that inch. We tear ourselves and everyone else to pieces for that inch because we know when we add up all those inches, that's going to make the difference between winning and losing, between living and dying. In any fight, it's the guy who's willing to die who's going to win that inch, because that's what living is, the 6 inches in front of your face. That's football, guys. That's all it is. Now, what are you going to do? After a contentious election, there's usually a lot of talk from people wanting to pull up stakes and move to another country entirely. But let me tell you, as an expat myself, life doesn't necessarily get any better just by moving to a new country. I moved to a different country, and not only did all my problems move with me, but suddenly I was a much worse speller. And I was inadvertently swearing all the time because they switched the meaning of a bunch of words. Back when I was a high schooler at the record store, I was embarrassed to say the Sex Pistols. Turns out I should have been even more scandalized by the Never Mind the Bullocks part of the album. I was whispering the wrong word at the Sam Goody. And that's not even close to the worst of it. I had a 45-minute meeting with HR the day I came in talking about my new fanny pack. Wankers. There are very few things in this world that I know for certain, and this is the biggest. No matter how strongly connected you are to a person, no matter how much they love you, no one wants to hear you talk about your dreams. I don't mean your aspirations. Your family, friends, and well-wishers absolutely want to hear all about your hopes and wishes. The best of them will even help you along that path. No, I mean no one wants to hear the other kind of dreams. The weird, non sequitur nonsense that your brain conjures up while you're sleeping. Stuff like, oh, so I was in my grandma's house, but it wasn't really my grandma's house, but I could somehow tell that it was. And I had this dog that was my pet, but I never actually had a dog as a pet. And it was barking, and I was chewing on this plastic, and so on. Making people listen to your dreams is conversational malfeasance. We all want attention, but we're all too self-absorbed to give any to anyone else. Knock it off. It's the holiday season, and so we're all going to be hearing a lot more about reindeer games in the weeks ahead. Now, I don't pretend to understand the nuanced culture that Santa and Blitzen and the elves have up there at the North Pole, but it sure sounds like it's got a lot of class, bias, and prejudice baked into it. If you ask me, I suggest staying out of reindeer games entirely. And while we're on the topic, here's some more animal games to stay clear of. Never play tag with a porcupine, and never play leapfrog with a rhino. The PB&J, a classic, timeless meal fit for a growing child or adult in a mild seasonal depression. But it's so classic that you usually forget you ate it by the time you abandon the dirty plate on the counter. But I'm going to show you how a few simple slices can shake things up and inject a much-needed dose of whimsy into your day. Most people slice their sandwiches in half, and we're not going to get too political about diagonal versus straight across cuts. There's something for everyone with this move. First, you're going to cut the bottom third off like so and put it on the plate. Then, you're going to cut the remaining sandwich diagonally, then plate it up like a little sandwich sailboat. Look at that. Sure, it'll be gone in less time than it took to make it, but we don't create beautiful things because we think they'll last forever. Muhammad Ali said that the man who views the world the same at 50 as he did at 20 has wasted 30 years of his life. It's a good thought. It reminds us to always keep an open mind, to keep questioning, to confront our bias and prejudice. There's a reason Ali was the greatest. So, today, I'm questioning one of the most core of Midwestern beliefs. The way we merge down to one lane of traffic is inefficient and wrong. Folks, we need to let go of tradition and embrace the zipper merge. You know the drill. You see that a lane is closed up ahead, so you do the right thing and get over to the correct lane ASAP. It's the right thing to do, and we're living in a society, right? Well, apparently it's wrong. Traffic engineers insist that if we all continue to use both lanes until the very last moment, then merge one at a time at the point where the road goes down to one lane, we'd all be getting to our destinations a lot faster. Panda walks into a cafe. He orders a sandwich, eats it, then draws a gun and fires 2 shots in the air. Why? Asks the confused waiter as the panda makes toward the exit. The panda produces a badly punctuated wildlife manual and tosses it over his shoulder. I'm a panda, he says at the door. Look it up. The waiter turns to the relevant entry in the manual and sure enough finds an explanation. Panda. Large, black and white bear-like mammal, native to China, eats, shoots, and leaves. We're talking about the Oxford comma here, friends. Now, I know that patience can be a subtle thief, but sometimes you really have to add that last comma and take a pause. There isn't one right way to do most things, but there are a heck of a lot of wrong ways. For example, making coffee. I'm going to tell you how to make the perfect cup. First of all, let's dispense with all the single-use, brew one cup at a time contraptions. You're choking the oceans with those little plastic pods. You're drinking all manner of mildew and mold that builds up in those machines, and the coffee tastes like wastewater from a leather tannery. Instead, take the time to grind some beans fresh each day, then brew the coffee yourself. This has the benefit of allowing you to take control of the ratio of coffee to water. This will pay off because if you make the coffee strong, the coffee's going to return the favor all morning long. This fort has been made with the same sheets every year for nearly 3 decades. The fort has a different configuration every year, but it's all made with the same sheets and cords and clothespins. So, an interesting philosophical question is this: has this been the same fort the entire time? Or is each fort a different entity? It's similar to the ship of Theseus conundrum. If over time every component, every rope, every plank of wood, every nail has been replaced, is it still the same ship you started out with? It's a thought experiment that is impossible to answer. But I can tell you this: they should make the bar much easier to find in this place next year. I'm looking for my wife. If this is where it has to happen, then this is where it has to happen. I'm not letting you get rid of me. How about that? This used to be my specialty. You know, I was good in the living room. They'd send me in there and I'd do it alone, and now I just... But tonight, our little project, our company, had a very big night. A very, very big night. But it wasn't complete. Wasn't nearly close to being in the same vicinity as complete because I couldn't share it with you. I couldn't hear your voice or laugh about it with you. I miss my wife. We live in a cynical world, and we work in a business of tough competitors. I love you. You complete me.